Welcome to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to building a truly borderless life. From entrepreneurship, investment migration, tax optimization, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome to another solo episode. I haven't done a solo episode in a while, and I have been living in Paraguay for some time now. I've actually been in Paraguay full time for probably about the last 7 months, and I'll probably be here for a year in total from when our lease is over and we leave, which is pretty crazy. I did not intend to stay here for an entire year, for half of 2024 and then over half of 2025, but that is just the way it is. So I thought I would do a podcast episode on what it has been like living in Paraguay, some of the tips, tricks, hidden gems that I have found. I'm living in Asuncion in the Villa Mora Recoleta area. Really nice area, lots of foreigners. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the episode. And then also some resources that you can use if you are looking to move to Paraguay or even just come visit, travel. There is so much to do in this country that I did not realize, which I am now documenting. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Or if you're just simply coming here to get your residency, coming for a week, a month, a few months, there's really a lot to explore in this country, and it's so much more than just Asuncion, the capital, even though I love Asuncion. It's definitely my favorite city. So let's first dive into, I think, the basics of why I really like living here. I talked about this in a December episode a little bit probably about 4 or 5 months ago now. So that's a little bit outdated at this point. But there are so many reasons why I really enjoy living in Paraguay. And quite honestly, I probably, like a lot of expats who are here longer term, never expected to be living in Paraguay. I have lived full time being like, in my description, I'd say like 6 months to a year minimum, in obviously Canada, where I was born and raised, and then China, Turkey, Slovenia, and now Paraguay, while traveling to over 40 different countries, not living long term, but just traveling in that time. So I definitely have lived in all of the continents at this point, or all of the major continents. We have Asia, Europe, North and South America, not Africa yet. But I really never expected to be living in South America, and especially Paraguay of all places. I never expected this. I came here fully with the intention. We first came here probably about 3 years ago just to travel. We were in and out of the country while traveling Latin America a little bit, and not for residency or tax purposes, more so for business purposes for both myself and my partner who runs a chain of businesses here. It makes sense for us to stay here a little bit longer term, potentially have a base here. I will talk about renting and buying and what that journey has looked like for us in this episode in a little bit more detail later on. But what I really like about living in Paraguay, I mean, there are many things. One of the major things for me is that I didn't eat meat for 15 years of my life. So for a significant period of my life, I did not eat meat. And there are a lot of health benefits to eating meat. That was not the reason why I stopped eating meat. It's totally a conversation for another time. Not going to get into that here, but I really wanted to start eating meat again, but I wanted it to be good quality meat was the most important to me. And so I knew, I mean, Paraguay, there is factory farming. There's factory farming everywhere in the world. It's just more efficient from a corporate perspective for these companies. But I would say Paraguay is still one of the last countries where there is so much green space, green fields, especially in the Chaco region, which is like over half the country. And so there is still the practice of traditional farming and not just factory farming, more so for beef, chicken. I'm not really sure on the industry in Paraguay, but I don't believe that it's quite as free range. I believe it's more corporate when it comes to poultry, but again, haven't looked into that in detail. So the beef industry is something that I was really interested in learning a little bit more about here. I will say it's interesting when I ask the locals, usually at the markets, of course, not at the supermarkets, but at the local markets like Mercado Cuatro, for example, one of the bigger markets in Asuncion, they have no idea where the meat comes from. I don't know if they don't know about factory farming or if they simply just don't know that factory farming is a practice that would happen here, and maybe it's true, or maybe it's naivety of them thinking that all the beef is just grown and raised organically the way it used to be, not with factory farm and big corporate intervention. So I don't really know which it is, but I do find that a lot of the locals don't really know where the meat is coming from, and they just will say like, yeah, a farm, in the interior. So that was a little bit of a challenge, I won't lie. But I have found some good beef companies, also beef tallow, and all of the beef is really affordable. So that's been something really nice to get back into eating good quality cuts of meat. And like, my gosh, it's so affordable. I posted on my socials, on Twitter or X, on Instagram, on all the socials the other day of just the whole beef aisle. It's crazy. It's just really good quality fresh beef at really great prices. Like I would say, obviously, depending on the cut and how heavy it is, but maybe you're looking at like $3 to $6 on average for one or two steaks, which I think is pretty good. I haven't lived in the West in a decade, so I don't know pricing, but I think that's pretty good in comparison. So that's one of the major things. Another that I really like about this city is just how green it is. I even just head up to the rooftop on our building, and the whole city is just beautiful, but also there's trees everywhere. Now, I do see that persisting in the future, but at the same time, I think that with all of the apartment buildings and whatnot that are going up, I could see that changing to a degree. But overall, it is just a really green city, especially if you're living in the areas where most of the foreigners end up. So Recoleta, Villamora, near Shopping Mariscal, which is where we live, or the other kind of major area is near the Shopping del Sol area. We were looking at an apartment just behind Shopping del Sol on Avenida Mariscal Lopez. So there are quite a few nice buildings there, but as you are walking throughout the city, you will see so many. I try to usually go on a daily walk, and you see just so many. I'm looking out the window right now, and right across from us, there is, of course, a biggie. There always is in a nearby proximity. And then there's this huge development going up. And then there's our building, the building beside us, two or three other buildings that we can see just directly looking out the front window. So there's definitely a lot of development in Paraguay. I mean, there's a lot of opinions around the development in Paraguay as well. But just to really state the facts without getting into anything subjective, I can easily go on a walk, 30-40 minute walk, and see, I would say on average 10 to 20, either for sale or for rent signs, sometimes both, but usually they're for sale, especially in this area, because the locals do know that the Villamora area is, of course, continuing to develop, and developers are looking to buy property here to build more and more buildings. Whether these buildings are getting filled is an entirely another conversation, and the real estate market in general of purchasing. But it is truly a interesting time in Paraguay's history, I find, and the reason that my partner and I are staying here, we're both in very different industries in what we do, but there is such a large development happening in the country now that most countries in the world have gone through at some point, in most continents, not all. And Paraguay is really still going through this development. And so this is kind of like the peak time of the 60s, 70s, 80s, when property was affordable, and cost of living just in general was pretty low in most of the world. That is really happening now in Paraguay. So I think it's an interesting opportunity. If you find the right property and development, most are not going to be a good opportunity. I will say we work with developers. I have personally looked at both houses and apartments. Most of them are not going to be the best opportunity, but there are definitely diamonds in the rough that can be found. So before going into a little bit about my own apartment hunting and that journey, and actually house hunting at the beginning, that journey, some of the things that I really enjoy about living in Asuncion, I've lived in Ciudad del Este as well for about 3 or 4 months. We had a place there. And I will say Ciudad del Este is great to visit. It's much smaller. I mean, Asuncion is very spread out, but Ciudad del Este is much smaller, especially the main areas where you're going to want to be. There's the center. I never really felt safe in the center, especially because the center is right next, like steps away from the border of Brazil. So it's not always going to be the safest. There is a favela that is pretty close to the border, so pretty close to that area. It's just not really the safest. There's not really much going on. I didn't find a huge community of expats there. So I would say it's definitely worth a visit, at least a few days, if not a week. But you probably are going to be living in Asuncion as a foreigner, quite honestly. And that's probably where you want to live as well. So I guess before going into that, on the topic of Ciudad del Este, we're kind of jumping around all over the place here because there's a lot to discuss in terms of Paraguay. But on the topic of Ciudad del Este, what to do, the areas that you're going to want to stay in, and then just living or traveling in Asuncion and Paraguay in general, we have started a new blog. So it actually has the old name of the podcast, which is Work, Wealth, and Travel. We really kind of changed the direction of the podcast and the business in general, working more with investors, entrepreneurs, family offices. And so we rebranded business, but we are still using the domain and the name of what the business used to be called. So that was Work, Wealth, and Travel. And now that has become a site. It's going to, at some point, be Latin America travel in general. But right now, it's really just Paraguay travel, Paraguay based, Paraguay focused. So if you head over to workwealthandtravel.com, you will find, I think we have probably about 35 articles. These are long form, detailed articles. It's myself and the team. And I really pour everything I know about Paraguay into each of these articles. So some of the topics, and there's a lot more to come. We have like a 2-week traveling itinerary of Paraguay, some of the benefits of living as a digital nomad in Paraguay, what the healthcare system, in my opinion, has been like through my experience, Mercado Cuatro, what you can expect there. And these all have photos from my own experience as well. I went to a natural medicine doctor in Paraguay, so I wrote about that. Is Paraguay expensive to visit and live in? Banking for expats in Paraguay. The Jesuit ruins in Paraguay, which is not far from Encarnacion in the south. Most people don't know that there are ruins in Paraguay, and there is. And so there's photos of that, and I wrote about that, what you could expect, how to get there on the blog. There is just so much. The best time to visit Paraguay, there are certain seasons, and it's about half the year, that I would not recommend to be here. And kind of on a side note of that, we have specifically planned our time in Paraguay and our lease to be in the winter because I love winter in Paraguay. It will be like maybe 10 lowest, maybe like 20, 25 hottest. I would say on average between 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. And it is just, I love that weather. I do not like 40 degrees, humidity. Like, I don't like that weather. I don't enjoy it. You're just hot and sticky all the time. I want to go for walks. I want to play paddle. And you can do that any time of the year, but it's really dreadful to do that in the summer months. So talking about that and my experience, apartment hunting, we're going to talk about that just a little bit today, but I go into so much more detail on the blog. What else do we have here? I'm just going through some of our articles. And in the future, there will be more about Latin America. But again, right now it's just Paraguay based. Walking over the border, because you can simply walk over the border, 10-minute walk from Brazil to Paraguay, vice versa. No ID needed if you meet certain stipulations. I have an article on my own experience living as an expat in Paraguay. Of course, residency, pros and cons. Is it safe to live in Paraguay? And then the different neighborhoods. The new Wazoo Park. That's a really fun park to go to in Luque if you like to walk like I do. La Cuadrita Street. So there's, a lot of information. And the reason that I started this is because I create a lot of videos on YouTube and here, of course, as well, but I can't go back and update them and add photos easily and just add more to it as I continue living my life in Paraguay. And so long form blog content was really the only type of content where I felt like as I continued to live in Paraguay, I could continue to add more to these articles and, of course, create new articles. And from there, continue to update on my experiences, add new and updated photos, links, information, Instagram pages, like just everything about Paraguay. Well, any type of social media is good. It's not something that can be easily updated. I guess I could start an Instagram page for this, but it's just not the same, not nearly the same level of detail. So everything is on the blog. And I mean, all of the articles, our writers are writing between like 2,500 to like 4,500 words. So these are very detailed articles. We also have some of the videos linked from both of our YouTube channels, which is Worldwise Capital, and then we also have a walking tour channel so that you could just see the streets. It's not information on what you can expect from Paraguay or like a narration. It's not that, but it is just simply walking through the streets, walking through main areas, main malls, main centers, so that you can get a feel of what it is like to come to Paraguay and to come. Most of the videos are in Asuncion. We have one in Ciudad del Este right now. And then just continuing to grow as I continue my travels throughout Paraguay as one of our multiple different bases. So I'll link the website, Work, Wealth, and Travel, and then also the YouTube channel, which is World Tour Walk for the walking tours on YouTube. I'll link them both below, but that is a resource I highly recommend checking out and bookmarking. And if you want to see any specific articles in detail, I mean, we can always make YouTube videos or podcast episodes on them, but again, not something that we can go back and update in the future. So if you are looking for any specific type of content, if you are on YouTube, then you can comment below. And we definitely do take that into consideration when we are going through and making any kind of information about Paraguay, about residencies, about global citizenship, about all of those things. So that is just a little bit of an insider look into what we are doing to really help everyone, not just the clients we work with, but everyone who's thinking of coming to Paraguay. Again, as we continue to travel throughout Latin America, there's going to be more countries on there, but right now it's just really Paraguay based because it's based on where I am and my experiences. So a few things I actually wanted to mention in there for those who are coming to Paraguay, living in Paraguay, whatever it may be. We've found so many hidden gems. I love checking out new cafes. There is going to be a detailed blog post coming soon to the blog of the cafes in Paraguay, but I haven't checked out all of the cafes that I want to see yet in the Villa Mora area. So that article is not released yet because there's probably going to be like 10 of my favorite and very popular cafes for foreigners in there once I've completed the rounds of going to all of these cafes. So there are many cafes that I really, really like. Of course, I have to plug, and we do have an article on this on the blog, El Café de Acá, the cafe of here. They have 3 branches, one in Los Laurales, one in Villamora, and the other is in the Paseo Galleria Mall. The food is so good. I always get the breakfast burrito. I don't think I've had anything else there because it's just phenomenal, and I never get over it. Oh, I did have mbeyu one time, and that was really good. It was a caprese. That was really delicious, but the breakfast burrito is so good. If you go and you like breakfast burritos, like you just have to get it. And so that's one of the many cafes that's going to be on the list, but I want to plug that one if you are coming to Asuncion just as like a little resource cafe with good Wi-Fi for you to go check out. Lots of foreigners there. I say it's probably the most popular foreigner cafe. And then La Cuadrita Street. I've been a few times. It's really close to our apartment, but I feel like a lot of people, even Paraguayans actually, don't know about this. So I have posted it on socials before. It's a really small street. I wouldn't really even consider it a street. It's more just like a walkway sponsored by Sudameris Bank. And there are just really cute restaurants, bars, cafes. I believe they're open all day, but really at night is when you want to go. It doesn't really get too busy from what I have seen on weekday nights, but on weekend nights, it can definitely get busier. And that's like right in the heart of Villa Mora. It's only a few blocks away from Shopping Mariscal. So I highly recommend you can just Google La Cuadrita. Probably the reel that I posted will come up, or just type it into Google Maps. I'm sure it's there. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just the specific restaurants. But I'll link the blog below. You can just type in La Quadrita, and there is a full article with their Instagram and everything linked on that. Okay, so we're kind of jumping around all over the place, which is fine because I hope it's good information. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and there is, again, a blog post where I go into a lot more detail on this because it took me and the team multiple days to write this. I think it was multiple days, maybe it was longer, at least a few days to write this blog post. So there's a lot more detail on there, but really, apartment hunting, buying a home, buying an apartment, like what my journey has looked like. Again, there are lots of opinions out there. It's very subjective. And I mean, if we're looking from an investment perspective for a property, probably I would say go with an apartment, not a housing unit. In Paraguay, there are pros and cons. Again, like you really want to make sure that you get the right developers who are investment based, who happy to provide you a referral if you're interested. But you really just want to make sure that you are. But when it comes to apartments in Paraguay, you could definitely go wrong. You can go right if you really do your research and detail. But that's from an investment perspective. If you're looking from a lifestyle perspective and you're actually wanting to live here or live a majority of the year here, if you're looking at a totally different scenario where you're not worrying about what the yields are looking like in the short term, the long term, trying to kind of guess what that housing market is going to look like some term. And it's not easy, especially with Nueva Asunción, so many new developments going up in the long term. But if you are really just looking from a lifestyle perspective, I mean, of course, there's farms. There are some really nice homes for sale in the center as well. So when I started probably about 6 months ago when I first came back here. And I started looking into potentially investing in Paraguay. Ultimately, for various different reasons, I decided against investing in a property in Paraguay right now. But I started actually looking at houses because the housing market is really interesting here, where you can still find in good areas really nice homes on sale for 200K minimum USD to maybe like 350,000 US dollars for nice home. I would say it's usually between 3 and 4 bedrooms, maybe 5 bedrooms, just depending on where the house is located and how much property it is. But if you're looking in the nicer areas, I'd say probably you're starting at like 250K for a 3-4 bedroom property in somewhere like Villamora, Recoleta, like some of the nicer areas, Los Laurel. And I was really blown away by these prices. I mean, where else in the world, in a capital city of all places, can you find a fairly large plot of land right in a central area in the capital city with a beautiful home on it? Now, again, not all of them are newly renovated or new homes, but some of the homes actually are newly renovated. And they are for sale. Now, the liquidity in the market here is a little bit of a different story, and so is just real estate agents. That is an entirely different conversation, but I'll touch on quickly. I guess in terms of liquidity, there is not a lot of liquidity in this market, especially right now. Again, in like 10 to 20 years, is it going to look different? It may, but if we're looking in the shorter term picture, you're probably going to have to expect, if you're selling a property, to have it sit on the market for at least a year. I would say it's pretty common, unless you're maybe pricing it too low. So it's not a very liquid market, but again, if you're investing from a lifestyle perspective, not for an investment perspective, then it's going to make sense to hold that for the long term. If you're investing for investment purposes, you're purchasing, I guess I should say, for investment purposes, then really apartments are going to be where you're at. But again, choose your apartments very wisely in Asuncion and the developers that you choose to work with and what their goals are. So when it comes to real estate agents in Paraguay, that is also another rant. But essentially, as in most countries, it operates different in Paraguay, where you do not need to be a licensed real estate agent to call yourself a real estate agent and to sell homes or be a buyer's agent. So there's absolutely no qualifications. You will go to the barber, you will get in a taxi, He'll start talking to the taxi driver, the barbershop, hair cutter owner, whatever, just random people in the street in Paraguay. And through a conversation, you'll probably hear at some point, oh yeah, I'm a real estate agent. So there is absolutely no qualification to become a real estate agent here. But because of that, there are so many of the Western agencies that we're familiar with, so Century 21, Remax, any of these large agencies that are in North America, they often, I have seen, again, not all of them, and it's more so the agents than the companies themselves, but the agents will take advantage saying that they're a part of this well-known Century 21, for example, this well-known Western real estate brokerage, when really there is no qualifications and no licensing that they need. Of course, Century 21 does their own vetting, but to a degree in Paraguay and the regulations and the governance of real estate agents, there is absolutely no governance over who is and who is not a real estate agent. So I have heard, thankfully it hasn't happened to any of our clients because we work with reliable real estate agents, more so who are independent, who have their own businesses and brokerages and understand the market, have been in it for at least a decade and really understand the market and what that looks like here. Not someone who's just new to Century 21, just signed up, wants to call themselves a real estate agent, maybe has a couple months or even a year under their belt. We don't work with those real estate agents. So if you are interested in a reliable agent, whether it is to purchase or to rent, usually you're looking at a minimum of 6 months. Anything less than that, just Airbnb or get a hotel. But you can always reach out to us because we do have solid referrals, and you don't want to work with a real estate agent who, honestly, you'll find if you start even just looking for rentals in Paraguay, a lot of them will not know the information about the unit. We have been to multiple showings. This is for rentals, not to purchase, thank gosh, but they did not know anything about the square footage. They didn't know if a parking spot was included in the price. And then we've actually had where the price that the real estate agent told us when they got speaking directly to the owner, when we showed a bit more interest, the price was actually higher. Not the owner, but I guess like the building itself, what the building was renting out the units for, the price was actually higher than what the real estate agent told us. So they had to come back and tell us that. Now, not significantly higher, but still you're looking at a couple 100,000 guarani more per month. And so they just don't always, again, this is not always the case, but they don't always know the market and the property itself that they are actually showing. So definitely exercise caution when it comes to that. But back to homes. So we can get very nice. Now, of course, you want to do your due diligence. It's not something that's always going to take place here in terms of running different checks before purchasing the home, mold checks, testing the water and whatnot. But that is something that can be done here upon request. And so I highly recommend doing that if you are buying a home, because a lot of these homes are at least 40, 50, if not likely much older, even though they are in great areas. Now, that being said, a lot of these properties, especially in the Villamora area and surrounding areas from here, a lot of these property owners know that they're likely at some point going to be selling to developers. So I have inquired about a few different properties that were just terrible homes, great lots, but homes probably it would take a long time to fix them up, or you just demolish and build something new. And the prices that they're asking, yes, they're great areas, but homes just garbage, full of mold, are astronomical. So I'm kind of at a crossroads of, I feel like a lot of the local Paraguayans, don't understand real estate. I have seen properties and it's just a shack. It is just a shack. It was painted bright green. It was actually in Ciudad del Este, so a much lower real estate market there. And they were asking 200,000 US dollars for it. It's just like, I don't know. I do think that some people just don't really understand the concept of like how to value their property and potentially even what the US dollar is worth. But they also can be higher pricing because they know at some point that they are going to sell to a developer, most likely, who can pay the price and not an individual. So that is another consideration to consider when you are looking to purchase in Paraguay. But if you are interested in details specific to your case, you can always book a consult with us below, and we are happy to guide you based on renting, buying, what you're looking for. There are farms to be purchased in Paraguay. Now it's entirely separate own ordeal, because it is very difficult, and most real estate agents will either deal mostly in Asuncion. If you're in Ciudad del Este, then obviously they'll deal there. They deal in their respective cities, but it's very difficult to find somebody who is dealing in farmland. We have found somebody reliable for our clients. It took a lot of searching, a lot of digging, a lot of connections in Paraguay, but we did find a reliable contact agent who lives in the countryside themselves, and who is able to either find properties in the countryside for sale or lobby based on what you are looking for with the owner of the properties. And then really, I mean, especially when you get into the countryside of Paraguay, it's all just about who you know and who you are and if you have a reputation in the community. And so our teams on the ground do always have this. So that's a lot of information to digest, but that is what I wanted to talk about in detail of really just why I'm in Paraguay, why I'm enjoying living here, some of the best things to do and see. The Work, Wealth, and Travel blog is a great resource, and continuing to add more information there for you. And then just a little bit about apartments. I mean, we've been in it's a lease now for about a month, and really nice, was furnished. Took a lot of digging for us to find it, but we moved in next day, which is what we were needing. So it does take knowing the right people in a small country like this to really find what you're looking for. If you have any questions, you can always book a call with us if you're interested in learning more, not only about Paraguay. I mean, I'm living in Paraguay, so it's something that I'll probably be talking a lot more about here. But at the same time, we work with a lot of our clients outside of Paraguay, actually, especially for tax optimization. If we're looking at crypto, that's another conversation right now. But if we're looking at bringing crypto, bringing investments, bringing your money into other jurisdictions when leaving your home country, Paraguay is probably not going to be the country for you. And it very much so just depends on the assets and the lifestyle that you're looking to build. So you can always book a call with us below. And thank you for joining me in this episode, and we will see you in the next one. You've just listened to the Worldwise Wealth podcast. Visit our links in the show notes below or at worldwisecapital.com to learn more about how we can assist in your borderless diversification journey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.